I've got Mount Dare's dual cab in today. I've just completed 85% of the 200k service. I've just got to do the wheel bearings. I've got to repack them, so I'm going to show you doing front wheel bearings on a cruiser. It's not a hard job. It is messy, but if you use the right techniques, it can be less messy. We've got a couple of seal kits over here. In worst case, we've actually got the bearings if we need to, so I'll take that kit there. That's all the seals for a bearing repack. But yeah, there's your hub seals, there's your locking tabs, all new gaskets for everything you take off, like the freewheeling hubs. Let's start with the passenger side. So it's a 22mm nut, and we'll rip that off. Beautiful. So I'm taking off the freewheeling hub now. It's a couple of 10mm bolts. I don't think these have been done for a while, so luckily I'm doing them. Yeah, we've got some 14mm to crack off here now. There we go. Oh yeah, they're pretty average. Now I'm just going to bend this little locking tab out of the way here. Alright, replace these gloves with some other gloves. Now we've just got this hub seal here that we've got to take out. Easiest way is to get a lever bar and just lever it out. You don't reuse hub seals when you do this job, so you can damage them taking them out. Come to the Mount Dare workshop and you'll see some seals. So rear bearing, look at that. Anyway, we'll get them all cleaned up. Paper towel is my new favourite thing in the workshop. Look at that, it absorbs all the oil, better than rags. I've got so much of it. What we need to do is, there's all this grease in here. That there. Got to get all that out. You want to make sure all the bearing surface, like any sort of seal surface, been wiped off too. You don't want to get any corrosion on that. You don't want to clean too hard on the rotor too, because it can warp it. Get all that stuff there. Soak for a little bit. We'll clean these bearings up now. Well, wipe them down, and we'll just visually inspect the rollers, and then if they look all good, we'll clean them up in the parts cleaner there and start re-greasing again. But I'll clean the stub axle up as well. We've got to clean all that up, check the seal on that, make sure there's no cracks on the stub axle, because that's where they can break if you hit a big enough hole. Wouldn't bring one as a spare though, because that's more like bad driving, not mechanical failure. Just looking at the rollers, they're looking all right. A little bit of a discolour. You can see a little bit of wear, definitely serviceable. We're just going to clean up all the parts so we can inspect them, and you know, you don't want to be putting together dirty parts onto something that has new grease and all that. You just clean it all out, inspect it, put the new stuff in. That's how things last. So we're going to wash the bearings now. We've cleaned up all the parts, got the bearings all cleaned up. Just got to clean the stub axle now. So how I like to do it is I've got a bit of degreaser. You can use brake clean, but you know, you're working with grease, so why not use a degreaser? So that'll help you out a lot. And if you're working at home, put a bit of cardboard down and collect some of the stuff. It means it's no big issue here, but and then we'll inspect the stub axle. On the older, like 75 series, the stub axles were a bit of a weak point, but I think they might have beefed it up for the 79, but it's still worth having a look while it's off, because you don't get to look at these sort of parts often. Alright, stub axle is all clean, the seal is all clean as well. You really want to make sure there's no dirt or grit on the seal. We'll put a little bit of grease on that before we assemble. The stub axle looks fine. The threads on the end of the CV look alright. Bins freely. I've cleaned the hub up. I've inspected the bearing races. In there, that's what the bearing runs on. You got a little bit of wear, but completely serviceable. So we'll just a repack today. Now it's the fun job. It's the bearing repack. I'll show you guys how to do that if you haven't done it before. All right, we've got our high temp wheel bearing grease. Just standard old wheel bearing grease, just the blue stuff. Gloves on. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to start with the back one first, because once we're done with the back one, we'll chuck it in, put the seal on, put it on, and then we'll do the front one last. You don't want to start with a whole lot of grease, just a little bit like that. So you've got a big end like that, you see the gap? Then you've got a small gap there. You want to get with the big gap, you hold it in like that, get the grease, and you want to take a little chunk out of it like that and push it down and scrape. Scrape, like that. And what you're trying to achieve is, see that grease coming out of the top there? That means that the grease has been pushed all the way through past the roller bearing and everything. So you've got to do that across the whole bearing. Now this is if you're repacking them by hand. There is little mechanisms that you can buy that you just put it in, do a couple pumps with the grease gun, happy days, you know, but don't have that here. All the grease has come through the top there, so what I do is I get a bit of, put it around the edges here, or what excess you have. Alright, we'll put grease into the hub now. Get a handful. You've got this bearing race here, there's a little cavity than the other bearing race, so you want to put a bit of grease in the cavity. Put a bit on the bearing race itself there. Freshly packed bearing. Beautiful. Put a bit of grease around there if you want. Alright, so the best thing to punch in your seals is a seal driver. We don't have one. So, next best thing is a block of wood. So you get your seal in here. You want a block of wood that is a little bit longer than the seal. Because these seals aren't inside all the way, they sit on the surface edge there. You can hit them with this. So what you do is you get that. Right, so got a bit of grease in that bearing race there. Time to pack this bearing now. Bit of grease on the stub axle now. So when you freshly repack the bearings, you want to sort of run the grease through the bearing a little bit. So what I do is I do that, just hand tight. And I move it, and you can probably hear the grease. Alright, so in this little kit here we've got a new locking tab. So the locking tab only goes on one way because there's a notch on that stub axle, so that goes there. Alrighty, bend that locking tab back in. Now we should have another new gasket for that freewheeling hub there, so we'll go find that. You don't want to use goop, you want to use gaskets because they are better than goop. If you don't do the gooping job right, you can really not make it waterproof, so that's how you get the water in the bearings sometimes. We'll grease this up, replace that gasket as well, we should have a new one in there. Right, so this is a freewheeling hub on the front of this Landcruiser here, and this is what allows you to be able to put no power to that wheel or put power to that wheel by locking the axle into this little mechanism here. It rotates, it moves, and you want it to be fairly free, so we're going to grease it up as well. Grease in here. So wherever it slides, you want to put a bit of grease in. Clean around where the gasket goes, and then we're good to go. Put it all back together. Right, so we'll shove these little cone washers in here. Pull the axle out. That's all back together. I've just got to put the tyre on and do the other side, but I guess there's no point showing you two sides because it'll be the exact same job. So that's how you do a wheel bearing on a 79 series on the front. Hope that helps someone.